At Automotive News, we generally like to think that our writing can hold its own. But on January 7th, when Jeff Morrill and Christa Collins penned an op-ed about getting more women involved in retail, well, a couple of our journalists sat up and took notice. Jeff and Christa are not just starting a small movement at Planet Subaru in Hanover, Massachusetts, they are sparking a downright revolution within that brand. As they pointed out in their Automotive News piece, nationwide, not even 20% of the dealership workforce is female currently. Not so at Planet Subaru, where more than 30% of the 64 team members are women. They include 5 managers, 6 women in sales, and many in the service department, including the service manager and the majority of their advisors. As they wrote, we have 4 women turning wrenches as technicians, more to our knowledge than any other Subaru retailer in the United States. Their goal, get to a team that is 50% male and 50% female. So let's meet them. Jeff Morrill and his brother founded Planet Subaru in 1998 and Planet Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram in 2004. They're so cool, they trademarked the motto, "Undealership," to describe the alternative experience they offer compared to a typical dealership. Planet Subaru is a 2-time winner of the Automotive News Best Dealership to Work For award. Please welcome Jeff Morrill. Jeff, come on up. And Christa Collins joined Planet Subaru in 2005 as a service administrator after studying design at the Wentworth Institute of Technology. She was later promoted to service advisor and then assistant service manager before earning her current position as service manager. She's created many career opportunities for people traditionally excluded from the car business, including 4 women technicians. As I said, setting the benchmark for Subaru. Please welcome Christa Collins. Christa. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, you sat there in the front row for the first part of this, a front row seat to that kind of content. What did you think? What do you think about what you've heard so far?
I definitely recognized a lot of the themes that we've lived with at the dealership and living out our commitment to include traditionally underrepresented groups in the business. And one of the things was I can tell you that the imposter syndrome applies to both genders because listening to those speakers, I was like, what are we doing here, Christa? but we're very, very pleased to be with you and honored to join you and accept the invitation to the Automotive News.
Of course. Chris, your thoughts?
The same exact thoughts. I felt somewhat ignorant to what was going on out there in the industry. I've always been very nurtured and supported by Planet Subaru, so I've never really experienced the full scope of what it's like being a woman in this industry that way. So I didn't honestly realize that scope until hearing these women and their experience.
The movement that is underway at your store is so unique in the landscape of retail. Why did you start doing what you're doing, and how did you accomplish what you're accomplishing?
When my brother and I opened Planet Subaru, we had bought a dealership that opened in February of 1998, closed in August of 1998, and lost $500,000 in between. So we were scared to death, and it turned out that we made $743 our first month. And you never forget how perilously close you are to oblivion in retail. So we had to tap every possible resource we could. And one of the things, beyond our interest in improving our corner of the world and including people that were excluded, we wanted to tap into a bigger talent pool than was available to us.
Let me just interrupt. You're a powerful guy, but you're pretty soft-spoken. I want to make sure everybody can hear you, right? Maybe speak up just a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I will. So when we discovered that the business was really leaving out so many people that could contribute much more meaningfully than or let me back up and say that the industry was neglecting a huge part of the talent that was available to it. And we needed those people. And so that's how it started. And then once you get it rolling, there's a flywheel effect. You know, our second hire was a woman in the sales department. And then once you have a woman joining the team, then subsequent applicants interviewing with you see other women in the business and say, oh, well, if that person's there, then maybe I can see myself succeeding in that way too.
So it's a momentum that built on itself.
Yes.
And then how did you get over to the service side then? What changes, how did that all get instituted?
It was sort of a similar thing. When I started there, obviously I was getting coffee and filing. I was brought in by another woman who's still currently there. She's been there 17 years, our lead service advisor. She brought me in there just seeing as a good opportunity for me because I was sort of floundering a bit once I got out of school with various jobs and things going on, and thought I would be suited to that company. I told her it was going to be temporary. And so
Always the same story.
Then 6 months later, I was coined a lifer. So I've been there ever since.
And how far do you think you can go with I mean, obviously the goal is out there, the 50% goal, but let's talk about what you're doing to make that a reality.
I think realistically, it's definitely possible. Since that's been written, we've hired 3 more women. One in our parts department. We now have 5 technicians,
okay.
And then we have another backup service advisor. So I don't see it being completely out of reach at all.
Rosie O'Donnell, I saw her interviewed once, and she's a huge cat fan, and as am I. And so I remember this. Someone asked her how she ended up with 13 cats in her home. And she said that she started with 12 and adopted 1 more. And so I'm looking at this saying I think we're at 33% as we sit here today, that the way to get to 50 is we got to get to 34% and then to 35%. So it's an incremental thing. And there is a headwind because we do struggle to excite people about the opportunities in the business because they're not well known among women. So we have to go way out of our way to do it, and we do, you know, I don't think we're going to get a lot of help in terms of the perceptions that people have about auto retail and the available opportunities to women, but that doesn't mean we can't, as Kim was talking about, we're going to keep trying, you know, keep working at it.
Let's talk about some of the benefits. In the January piece that you penned, you said hiring women doubles the size of our recruiting pool in an era when competition for talent is fierce. I can imagine just hiring in general is a challenge. I mean, it has been one in the retail space. But to your point, you've just expanded the whole area that where you're searching for talent.
Well, Christa, talk with me about your experience trying to find experienced technicians.
They're out there, but it's not really what we're looking for. A lot of times what we find with the experienced technicians, obviously there's no women in that category. There's only 1% of technicians that are female out there, so finding one is like a unicorn. It's just not going to happen. So when we do put out the language and when we put out the ads, it's really open for anyone to apply. Like, we're begging people to come in and join us with this, and I think a lot to do with our interview process too as they come in. It's sort of drawn out a bit, but it really lets them see us, come in and experience what it's like to be there, and I think that's helpful too in retaining them and getting them to come back.
You also wrote that many women are more loyal because you offered them an opportunity that they couldn't find elsewhere. Still true?
I think so.
Yeah.
Many of our female technicians would not have had that sort of opportunity anywhere else. I know one in particular, Vanessa, she was actually in another, it was Boston Magazine, I believe they did an article on her. Her husband's a technician. He's had jobs just thrown at him, and she's never even had that opportunity, and she is just as skilled and wanting of these opportunities as he is, and it just was never able to get her foot in the door. So that was definitely something we want to be able to do.
And Jeff, you've even said that when you've publicized your success, customers drive past the dealership and they opt to buy or service their vehicles because they share the same values as you do.
Yes, I think that when I talk with dealers, and this is obviously a very different audience than I'm accustomed to sharing these ideas with, but when I talk with other dealers, I appeal to their desire to not look at their workforce as somehow this is their interest in attracting people that are traditionally underrepresented is somehow costly. It's actually profit generator in the sense that that when people learn about what we're doing, our customers, they want to do business with us, and they talk with us about this. You can see it in the reviews, the online reviews, that people, when they come in, they see that the workforce looks like they do, which is a big appeal to some people, and it's certainly a value of ours.
You said it's not uncommon to see the service manager and shop manager huddling with a couple of technicians over an engine, and they're all women.
Yes.
That's what you wrote, yeah.
That's
a different,
That's
right?
the norm for us.
Right.
It is, yeah.
You also talked about people being a little skeptical. You said there are some common refrains that are often used when it comes to hiring. One of them is that women don't apply for our openings, is the typical retail refrain. You say we don't see enough applicants either, but you highlight language in your recruiting ads. Do you want to talk about those ads?
I think I did a little bit just by saying we're almost begging people to come here. Like, we want everyone who's interested to show up, and we're willing to take that on and train them and put them in to what we have. We have like an apprenticeship program, which is similar to what we're doing here today, where you take people under your wing. Obviously, a lot you learn hands-on in that sort of environment, so you really need a good teacher and someone who has that to be able to teach that. Obviously, there's online training and things they send you out to the corporate headquarters sort of things, but you don't really get that full scope unless you're actually hands-on with someone. Same way I was trained through each step. A lot of it, there wasn't a lot of women in that respect at that time, but now it's getting better. A lot of my mentors were Jeff, for example, people pushing me into these things that I normally wouldn't do, like this, for example. This is completely out of my comfort zone. So.
I just want to add.
Christa's being vulnerable.
Oh, yeah.
She admitted this before we started. She said, "I'm going to be vulnerable today." Yes. Well done.
I've had the pleasure of hiring, being directly involved in the hiring and the supervising of a few hundred people over my career in the car business, and I see patterns. In painting with a broad brush, I see that many men come to us with quite a bit more confidence than competence, and women are reversed. So we have different challenges supervising women, and maybe Christa can add to this, but with the men, I'm usually asking them why they did something so stupid. And with the women, I'm trying to encourage them and gently push them into opportunities that they may think that they're not prepared for. So I was thrilled when we were invited to do this, because Christa hasn't had occasion to participate in something like this before. And I knew she'd did learn so much and enjoy interacting with everybody, and just the experience of this is terrifying, really. And she's going to survive this and come out of it a much stronger manager, I think. So,
let's get to that point. Supervising women, how is it different?
It is very different. Exactly what he's saying. A lot of young men and people who have come through, and women, you can. In the shop, they will get overconfident and think they should be doing things they really shouldn't be, and the women will sort of stay back a little bit. Right now, with our apprenticeship program, we have a few candidates that we want to move up in that program in the company, because we like to promote from within. And the young lady that we really wanted to push up, she's not quite ready yet. We're not going to push her, but I may give her a nudge a little bit sooner than the other, but the gentleman is all for it. He's going to go for it, and I feel just a picture that's painted of how women are in general, even myself, like to be that way, and we need to stop that. And that's sort of what programs like this and things of that nature need to help to promote.
I guess I was going to ask you what you've both learned over the last few years, given the transformation of your stores.
I've learned to try to put myself out there and then to help other women do the same. A lot of times when they come in, they sit down with Jeff or my boss, director, Matt Ryan or Dale, and to be in a room with that sort of thing, it is intimidating. And then when I come in and step in, it's sort of, you can feel the breath sort of come out and they relax a bit. And I'd like to be able to do that.
Jeff, your thoughts?
one of the words I heard multiple times today from different speakers was the word opportunity. I heard that come up over and over and over again. And I guess I've learned that if you give people an opportunity, you'll see extraordinary results from pretty ordinary people. I mean, in retail, we don't get MBA applicants. I mean, we have many of the people we hire have high school degrees or not even in our, the blue collar jobs that we have, and even in some of the other jobs, we don't attract, generally college educated people. We have to look for diamonds in the rough, and that's I guess I've been amazed that if you give someone who really wants it and hasn't found the opportunity elsewhere, they have a burning passion that'll just blow you away.
How do you, so it's one thing to attract, and what are you doing differently to retain the women who you have in your stores?
Well, one thing that we've been doing recently is changing our schedule a bit, because most of our staff is working mothers, including myself. And in this industry, the hours and things like that aren't conducive to mother's hours. There's no such thing, really, in that. So with this schedule, we have 410s, and that actually frees up time for them to be home with their family or reduce daycare costs and things of that nature, which also helps them give 100% while they're there, because they're not worried about these other sort of concerns that can come into play with your everyday job.
Jeff, how about advice for other dealers who are looking to start hiring more women, and they may not have an existing female base to draw in from for applicants?
Well, those Snap-on tool posters with the women in the bikinis kind of spread over the hoods of a '57 Chevy?
Right.
Step one, take those down. All right. So,
well done.
And after that, I think...
and after that...
That's a big thing. And I think it begins with the commitment to bringing people into your business who don't have experience and don't have specific preparation for the job, because we're trying to bring in people who aren't already doing it. So if you don't have a training program in place and you don't have any support for those people, it's just not going to work. So if you've arranged your organization in a way that you have some way to draw those people in and prepare them for the job that you're asking them to do, then you've expanded your available applicants tremendously. And then, as Christa referred to earlier, we write our ads very particularly to avoid, as Katie was talking about, terms like technician ninjas. And we don't want to bias the language in a way that intimidates people, because people are pretty savvy, and they can learn a lot about an organization based on the ad that you run. So we talk about the success we've already had with women in the company, and
you're very explicit with that in the ads.
Oh yes, so explicit. In fact, well, explicit might not be the right word, but Monster.com wouldn't let us run the ads because they didn't like the way we specifically identified a group, women in this case, and talked about how they had succeeded with us and specifically invited them to join us. So we had to go to other companies to run the ads.
Really?
So, because we want to really make it, if you're not explicit, maybe not the right, that's kind of a word with a double entendre. If you're not detailed and direct,
right,
specific about who you're looking for, I think sometimes people miss the invitation.
Did you have a model that you followed when you built this idea out? Was there anybody else who you were?
Well, I wish we had called Katie 15 years ago. That's the model, because it would have saved me a lot of work. Because we made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we didn't understand. But most of the things that she discussed in her presentation, we learned the hard way. So no, we didn't have any. We just kind of. Well, I'm reminded. There's a quote by the novelist E.L. Doctorow about driving in the fog at night, and he said. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. And that's pretty much how we just started doing it. And from that first hire, and we just kind of figured it out.
How has Subaru responded to this? Are they starting to adopt some of your principles for other stores?
Subaru's a very progressive company.
Right.
And so they're very supportive, and they've encouraged us to do this and publicized it to try to, maybe inspire other dealers or shame other dealers or motivate other dealers to do more of it. And certainly I get phone calls from fellow Subaru dealers, and I always love taking the calls. I'm so honored and flattered that they're interested. And the questions they have are how I'm short, I don't have enough technicians. I don't care, I mean, I don't care what they look like,
Generally.
what gender they are, just give me,
Right.
how do I get more technicians? So the car dealers generally, for everything you might say about them, and I say some of those things about them, they're pretty practical. So they need technicians, they're gonna find some way to bring more in.
Are you partnering with local high schools in any way to generate more interest?
High school's not at this point, but we do, with the school we were going to, Matt actually did the meeting.
Yeah, there's a local, it's a for-profit technical
Yes.
school.
Okay. A question from the audience. Do you think women have to be pushed to succeed?
I do. I know in some cases, I don't know why it's sort of programmed, I feel, in our DNA that we don't deserve it, but we do. And I think that needs to be how everyone feels, and it's, yeah.
Okay. Your view?
Absolutely, and as I was talking about before, like, we really, that imposter syndrome is a real thing, and I think you need to find a way to encourage people in a way that doesn't, you know, that maybe like you want them to discover the potential that they have, and not, you don't want to drop them so far into the deep end that they panic or leave. We've never had that trouble, but
Yeah.
they do need a lot of gentle encouragement,
They do.
certainly, and in many, and not just in the service department. We've experienced that in other departments too.
Related, how do you take a role in building confidence with women in your leadership positions?
I would never put them in a position they're not comfortable doing, especially dealing with something like that. We are very conscious of safety and things of that nature, make sure they're prepared to do what they need to do. So we're always backing them up with the knowledge and the help that they need. And everyone in the shop, male or female, is very open to help with that mentoring part of it, because it doesn't help anyone if none of us succeed. We all are a part of this team and need to make sure we're all taken care of for the greater good of the company.
Are you going on frequent leadership training programs as well?
No. This is sort of my first. Well, I've learned everything.
Come on, Jeff.
This is my first conference. This is our first presentations. This is all first for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, without all of that, when we met Christa, she was employed as the beverage cart driver at a golf course.
That was
And-
one of my jobs. Yes.
Which is one of your many jobs, and we've tried to help her along the way in perhaps less formal ways. But I guess it looks like
I think most of my experience has been through the dealership and being in. I've worn a lot of hats there, going through each role. So that's where I've learned a lot.
You know, we have a leadership academy.
Yeah. No,
What's
okay.
the next level of training and skill building look like for the next generation, especially millennials? What do you think, being around the current workforce you have? What do we have to do?
I think, yeah, you have to keep it, as they were saying earlier, challenging and keep it interesting for them to stay engaged. A lot of times they want a really quick, they're not always willing to put in the time they need to get to where they need to be, and we want to make sure they're really prepared for that. So they want to be this flat rate technician taking engines apart by their third week in, and that's just not what we're about. We want to make sure they're prepared. And they may sort of have someone, I'd say, I don't know if to put it the right way, somewhat of a chip on the shoulder of a preconceived notion of what they should be doing, or this novel idea of the glamorous technician thing. But there's a lot of time and effort in other activities they need to do first to put their time in to earn their spot there. So I hopefully we get that point across early on and try to implement that through their learning process.
Thoughts?
I don't think I have anything to add.
What do you want to do eventually?
What do I want to do eventually? To be quite honest, I'm very focused on what I'm doing now, so I've never really thought about it, which is a terrible thing to say right now. I've never been put on this type of stage, literally. And the fact that I'm where I'm at now is almost a surprise to me. I got into this completely on accident. I went to school to be an interior designer. I wanted to go design hotels and restaurants. Didn't pan out, and I'm happy with what I'm doing now, and I hope to keep doing things like this and get more comfortable and not have to hold a tissue because I might lose it. So I hope to get better with things like that.
I think you've done a tremendous job, don't you think, today? One more question, Jeff, for you. When we look down the road, how many years is it going to be before we get to your 50% goal?
He was saying he was going to die before it happens earlier. He didn't want to tell you that. We were talking about it over dinner last night, and I think, you know.
Is that what he said at dinner last night?
Just candid conversation.
Okay.
You know, sorry to put you on the spot that way.
No, that's not. No,
But it was just because the progress and what we've seen and heard here. Obviously, it's very slow, and it's to be, I guess, more optimistic.
It's just that I referred earlier to that headwind, and you know, Jim Collins, the management guru, said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think if you expand that a little bit and think about a culture in a society, not just a company, we're a small company trying to swim against upstream against the tide that it just hasn't been especially supportive of women. And it's getting better, I mean, as some of the women talked about today, but we still have a long way to go. And I won't, you know, I could tell you, yeah, we're going to be there in 3 years or 7 years, or I just don't know if we are going to make progress at a rate fast enough to do it, you know, while I'm still, well, it depends. I mean, at the rate I'm having accidents, we don't have much time left, so.
Jeff had a very terrible mountain biking accident. He was, how long ago?
It's last year.
Last year. He was alone. He told me this morning in the elevator at the hotel that he thought he might die, could have died, because he was alone. And it's a triumph that you're here today. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your courage and your vulnerability. And thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.